Chapter 1 of Christie's Old Organ. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Esther Simonides. Chapter 1 The Old Organ. Home, sweet home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home, played the unmusical notes of a barrel organ in the top room of a lodging-house in a dreary back street. The words certainly did not seem to apply to that dismal abode. There were not many there who knew much of the sweets of home. It was a very dark, uncomfortable place, and as the lodgers in the lower room turned over on their beds, many of which were merely bare wooden benches, it may be that one and another gave a sigh as he thought how far he was from home, sweet home. But the organ played on, though the hour was late, and the dip candle was put out, and the fire was dying away. If you had climbed the crooked staircase, you would have seen an old man sitting alone in his attic, and smiling at his organ as he turned it with a trembling hand. Old Treffy loved his barrel organ. It was the one comfort of his life. He was a poor, forlorn old man, without a friend in the world. Every one that he had loved was dead. He had no one to whom he could talk, or to whom he could tell his troubles, and thus he gathered up all the remaining bits and fragments of love in his heart, faded and withered though they were, and he gave them all to his old organ, which had well nigh seen as many summers as he had. It was getting very antiquated and old-fashioned now. The red silk in front of it was very soiled and worn, and it could not play any of the new tunes, of which the children were so fond. It sometimes struck old Treffy that he and his organ were very much alike. They were getting altogether behind the age, and people looked down upon them and pushed past them as they hurried along the street. And though old Treffy was very patient, yet he could not help feeling this. He had felt it very much on the day of which I am writing. It was cold, dismal weather. A cutting east wind had swept round the corners of the streets, and had chilled the old man through and through. His threadbare coat could not keep it out. How could he expect it to do so, when he had worn it so many years he could scarcely count them? His thin, trembling old hands were so benumbed with cold that he could scarcely feel the handle of the organ, and, as he turned it, he made sundry little shakes and quavers in the tune, which were certainly not intended by the maker of the old barrel organ. There was not much variety in the tunes old Treffy could play. There was the Old Hundredth, and Poor Mary Ann, and Rule Britannia. The only other one was Home, Sweet Home, but that was Treffy's old favourite. He always played it very slowly, to make it last longer, and on this cold day the shakes and quavers in it sounded most pathetic. But no one took much notice of old Treffy or his organ. A little crowd of children gathered round him, and asked him for all sorts of new tunes, of which he had never even heard the names. They did not seem to care for Home, Sweet Home, or the Old Hundredth. It soon moved away. Then an old gentleman put his head out of a window, and in a cross voice told him to go on, and not disturb a quiet neighbourhood with his noise. Old Treffy meekly obeyed, and, battling with the rough east wind, he tried another and a more bustling street, but here a policeman warned him to depart, lest he should crowd up the way. Poor old Treffy was almost fainting, but he must not give up, for he had not a halfpenny in his pocket, and he had come out without breakfast. At length a kind-hearted farmer's wife, who was passing with a basket on her arm, took pity on the trembling old man, and gave him a penny from her capacious pocket. Thus all day long Treffy played on. Over and over his four tunes were sounded forth, but that was the only penny he received that cold day. At last, as the daylight was fading, he turned homeward. On his way he parted with his solitary penny for a cake of bread, and slowly and wearily he dragged himself up the steep stairs to his lonely attic. Poor old Treffy was in bad spirits this evening. He felt that he and his organ were getting out of date, things of the past. They were growing old together. He could remember the day when it was new. How proud he had been of it! Oh, how he had admired it! The red silk was quite bright, and the tunes were all in fashion. There were not so many organs about then, and people stopped to listen. Not children only, but grown men and women, and Treffy had been a proud man in those days. But a generation had grown up since then, and now Treffy felt that he was a poor, lone old man, very far behind the age, and that his organ was getting too old-fashioned for the present day. Thus he felt very cast down and dismal as he raked together the cinders and tried to make a little blaze in the small fire he had lighted. But when he had eaten his cake and taken some tea which he had warmed over again, old Treffy felt rather better, and he turned as usual to his old organ to cheer his fainting spirits. For old Treffy knew nothing of a better comforter. The landlady of the house had objected at first to old Treffy's organ. She said it disturbed the lodgers, but on Treffy's offering to pay it,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?